my dears, and welcome to me realizing that my whole room is just like on a little bit of a tilt. Like, I'm sitting level, the camera is level, but look at this. Look at how... It's very upsetting. Anyway, so the topic of today's video is, should autistic people go to social skills therapy? And I get asked this a good deal from parents of autistic children and from autistic people themselves. So we are going to talk about the pros and the cons of SST today, what the options out there are, and spoiler alert, how you can bypass all of those because this video is the launch of my new series of social skills on my channel. So, to begin with, rather than calling things social skills and social deficits, we're going to instead call them autistic social skills and neurotypical social skills, because as we've talked about many times before, it's not social deficits in autistic people, it's social differences. Neurodivergent to neurodivergent relationships work great. Neurotypical to neurotypical relationships work great, and neurotypical to neurodivergent relationships don't tend to always work too great. In the same way that somebody who speaks only Italian and somebody who speaks only English will have a difficult time communicating until they learn a little bit of each other's languages and understand some things in common. And they understand that things aren't going to always come across perfectly and that miscommunications are going to happen. The thing is, in that case, it's expected that both of the people work together to communicate, to learn a little bit of each other's language, and know that miscommunications, mistranslations, and mess-ups are seen as expected, sometimes hilarious, and the fault of the situation rather than either of the people involved. In the case of the neurodivergent and neurotypical person, however, the work to communicate and the blame for errors is traditionally entirely placed upon the neurodivergent person, which is just expected and seen as a normal dynamic in our society, even though in the other example, saying the Italian speaker is perfect and the English speaker needs to get better at Italian and they're not trying hard enough, and all of the miscommunications are completely their fault for not trying hard enough, makes absolutely no sense. So, as we talk about this discussion, keep in mind that nobody is deficient, nobody is wrong, we all just use different methods of communication. And I know that you know this, but it's important that I still reiterate it. And if you are non-autistic or non-neurodivergent and you are just hearing this and you want to learn about how we communicate so you can communicate with us, I will link a video about that above. I think it's over here. And as my neurotypical social skills series continues, I will also be explaining in each video how neurodivergent people tend to socialize in the same situations and what both neurotypes would do so that we can all learn from each other and make for better relationships and communication. So, what is SST, or social skills training? Well, unfortunately, all of the sources that I had to read for this video were from the Autism Speaks and the Applied Behavioral Analysis Program websites, which was a truly horrifying endeavor. I need extra therapy from it, and I'm going to try my very, very hardest to remove as much of the infantilizing and disgusting language as I possibly can from the things that I've learned and I'm talking about in this video. It is very much ingrained in the ideals of SST though, so if I do say something offensive, know that I don't mean it as offensive. So, SST is defined as a wide range of interventions and instructional methods used to help an individual understand and improve social skills, and it is often associated with the fields of special education, cognitive behavioral therapy and other types of therapy, relationship-based therapies, and applied behavioral analysis, which I lovingly call autistic conversion therapy. I do have a video about this as well. I will link it above and probably in the description. I am working on an updated, more nuanced version of that. It's going to be out next weekish. It's going to be a lot longer, so just stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, that's still a good resource. But anyway, social skills, therapies, yes, they have no single official certification, aka there isn't a lot of consistency between these various programs. And it also means that it can be taught by occupational therapists, behavioral therapists, school psychologists, general education teachers, health and PE teachers, other direct care staff, and parents and siblings. Also me. Also, it is not at all unusual for a school psychologist or a social worker to run social skills programs with relatively little training or background. So the first of the four types of program is peer-mediated instruction and interventions, or PMII. In this kind of therapy, children without a diagnosis in the neurodivergent categories are trained to be peer mentors or peer tutors, and they are assigned a series of tasks to work with their autistic classmates. These tasks include how to facilitate social and play interactions, and the physical environment of the space is structured in such a way, whether that's a classroom or a clinic or anything else, to support social interactions. Now, in my personal opinion and experience, this method can have two major issues to it that are important to acknowledge. First of all, it makes the autistic student see friendships as oh, the other person's teaching me things and I don't actually know anything, and also as something that is a lot of work and takes a lot of time, and a lot of that time involves feeling really icky about yourself, which makes them less likely to want to make friends on their own in the future, as well as making them more likely to end up in bad social situations with bad friends, with bad partners, etc. The second issue here is that while on the surface it may seem ideal to have peers teach autistic kids how social things work, that more often than not leads to weird power dynamics and the very real and honest potential for a lot of bullying from their peers. I mean, it does not mean that this method does not work, because I'm sure it's done a lot for so many people, and I know I've learned a lot about social skills from my peers, but I am just acknowledging that there are many things here to keep in mind and to watch out for in this situation. The next type is social stories and scripts, which involves describing a particular social concept using written or visual materials, typically in combination with role-playing, peer intervention, and rehearsal models to practice these skills. They can also be specified to the interests of the child so that the child is more motivated and engaged. This is kind of how I did my SST. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I'm personally a fan of this method. The third type is video modeling, which according to the article that I read is the most effective method. I personally take that with a grain of salt given the source. Also, what does effective even mean? But it involves individuals watching a video demonstration of a behavior and then attempting to perform the social skill immediately after. And these videos can be of other children or adults engaging with others in different power dynamics and whatnot, and they can also be videos of the individual that can be collected and watched later. The free version of this kind of therapy includes watching TV shows or movies, memorizing the entire script, and then parroting the interactions back to other people and calling that social interactions. Sorry, what? That's not how that works? Oh. Okay, anyway, the last type is peer groups, which logically sounds nice, and I probably would have had to do this if there had been a pandemic when I wanted to do SST, but there is also no way in heck that I would put myself through this. But anyway, that is just my opinion, and that has nothing to do with anything. This type of SST involves weekly 90-minute group sessions for 3 to 4 months for children with ASD, aged preschool to young adults. These sessions tackle a variety of different social skills taught through lessons, roleplay, and group activities designed to foster socialization. That had so many buzzwords in that sentence. A parent or caregiver often attends, and they also train to help the learner practice these skills in their homes and in the community. Regardless of the method, every type of SST includes direct or explicit instruction and teachable moments with practice in realistic settings, a focus on timing and attention, support for enhancing communication and sensory integration, whatever that means, learning behaviors that predict important social outcomes like friendship and happiness, that's kind of a yikes phrase, and a way to build up cognitive and language skills. Every curriculum should include structure and predictability, break down abstract social concepts into concrete actions, simplify language and group children by language level, work in pairs or groups with cooperation and partnership encouraged, provide multiple and varied learning opportunities and learning styles, foster self-awareness and self-esteem, and provide opportunities for practice so that the skills learned can be used beyond the group in real-life settings. Some topics that are typically covered include initiation conversations, greetings, appropriate eye contact, how to behave in specific social and community settings, understanding emotions and facial expressions, gestures and body language, all of that good stuff, assertiveness and empathy. And I hope that at this point, a lot of red flags are popping out and you're thinking to yourself, but autistic people have their own way of doing empathy and emotions and body language and eye contact, and why is the word appropriate being used continually here? Which I fully and completely agree with. Hence why, when I decided I wanted to pursue SST, I quickly realized what this is and what it typically looks like, and realized I had to get creative for myself. Now, I'm not saying that it's not important to learn how neurotypical people do these things, because I think it has a ton of benefits, which we're going to get into in a little bit, but I do have a serious issue with how it is typically presented. I mean, these therapies typically treat the autistic person as if they are just an empty cup that doesn't know anything that needs to be filled, rather than working with the skills that we already have and learning a more holistic approach to what all of the options for all neurotypes are. And that the info on the websites has sentences like, "In an ideal world, such therapy will allow people on the autism spectrum to become almost indistinguishable from their typical peers. And after a few years of this therapy, I've seen several of my patients actually have their autism diagnosis removed." Which, what? Huh? A few years of social skills classes does not magically rewire your brain to become a neurotypical one. That's not how that works. But sure, let's just keep telling parents that we can cure their child of a thing that cannot be cured and is a rather regular variation of human existence. This makes complete sense and is not misleading in any way, of course. Yes. And if you like your autism, which I hope that on some level you do, because it is an important part of who you are, if you have it, of course, you may be thinking, okay, do I really need to put myself through this if I don't want to change anything? And the answer is, oh my goodness, of course not. No, you don't have to do that. But that being said, there are definitely some benefits, and we do need to acknowledge those, because sometimes neurotypicals perceive us as condescending, cold-hearted, and self-centered, even when we don't mean it that way. And sometimes we have situations like the lovely Hannah Gadsby did in a Colbert interview, which we're just going to put the whole thing right now.
Which one would you like?
I'd like Raphael, if you know.
Would you just?
Yes.
Classic.
I feel criticized.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
Oh, see, that's tone. I have issue with tone. I meant warmth. My voice said cold.
That clip is never not the most relatable thing in the entire world. We've all been there. But if you dig through all of the offensive ideals and word choice and whatever in these social skills papers and websites and whatnot, there is actually solid research saying that SST does make autistic people happier because they're more able to effectively communicate with all types of people, make friends with all types of people, and understand all types of people. In the same way that in our original analogy, if you're an English speaker plopped in the middle of a solely Italian-speaking town and you learn a little bit of Italian, you're going to be a lot happier because you feel less isolated, you understand a bit of their language, and you can make more connections with other people. However, you can learn those things in addition to the skills you already have, because you do have social skills, and that's what these programs tend to ignore, even though we all know that you learn better when you are not treated like a clueless child. So, as somebody who is far too used to being self-sufficient, who decided that she wanted to do SST at the start of the pandemic and quickly came upon these realizations, I had to outsource. So my first discovery upon trying to research this was that most everything I found was either like, Mary took Jason's ball. Is Jason sad, happy, or anxious? Or alternatively, here's the specific neurotransmitter that responds to this specific social situation, and obviously neither of those were even remotely helpful. And so that's when I stumbled upon Jennifer Cook O'Toole's book, The Asperkid's Secret Book of Social Rules, the handbook of not so obvious social guidelines for tweens and teens with Asperger's syndrome, which is an incredible text on its own, just because it's being taught social skills by somebody who also had to learn them herself and was once in the same boat that I'm currently in, so it was explained in a very logical way that made sense to me, and it also led me to several other books, articles, podcasts, whatnot, and at the end of this whole venture, I came up with a 25-page guide to neurotypical social skills. Not so I could change myself to be a neurotypical because, well, at that point I was in active recovery for the several disabilities that I developed as a direct result from trying to pretend that I was neurotypical, but also so that I could understand where other people were coming from, so that I could gain some sort of tools to communicate with them and to feel like I had a solid basis to branch off from. And this guide has now morphed a good deal, and the more that I learn about myself, the more I figure out what my ideals and values and goals in life are, whatnot. And many of the sections of it are now part of the How to Start Over guide, which is on my website, I'll link that below, as well as part of what I lovingly call my Sydney user guide, which I send to a lot of employers and teachers. But it was a good start for me. I was able to learn about all of the options, decide what things I wanted to change about myself, what kind of information I just wanted to keep in my head, and what kinds of things I just wanted to keep as myself and just accept their quirks. And I pulled it up today for the first time in a year and a half or so, and the note that I wrote to myself on the cover of this silly little packet in a time where I was just coming to terms with my autistic identity and trying to figure out what the heck I really was kind of hit home for me, so I'm just gonna share it with you, what I wrote. It says, hey you, forgive yourself if you mess up. You are genetically predispositioned to really struggle with this stuff and you're doing your very best. You're not going to be perfect. What is correct or perfect is based on neurotypical expectations. You are not broken or a horrible person, you just speak a different language and you're trying to learn this one. You'll never be fluent, but that's okay. What's important is that you're trying and you take your mess-ups as learning experiences. Keep your chin up, keep on moving, you got this. So that's my message to you as well, and to answer the question in the title of today's video, yes, autistic people do need social skills therapy, but also so do neurotypicals because, well, quite frankly, nobody knows what they're doing, no matter what neurotype they are, and I'm beginning to also be firmly convinced that neurotypicality does not exist, and communication and accessibility should never be the sole responsibility of the disabled person, because if everybody gives it a little bit of work and everybody gives a little bit to compromise, disability wouldn't even have to exist. The next episode of the series will be in a month-ish. We're going to talk about boundary setting, and I hope to see you there, regardless of what your neurotype may be. I think we can all work on boundary setting. To hear about how I royally screwed up boundaries for years and lost all of my friendships because of it, and now I kind of think it mostly makes sense, and I kind of understand, and understand how we can get to know each other better, again, regardless of neurotype. So, as always, thank you for listening, thank you for learning. Remember, your story isn't over, it has only just begun, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.